In our last video, we handled showing a form when someone requested a view. This is known in HTTP parlance as a GET request. When we submit our form, though, we don't want to put information into the URL, which a GET request would do. We want the data to be safely transmitted behind the scenes in our HTTP headers. So we'll use a POST request. That means, though, that we have to do a bit of extra work in our view to process the form. But hey, I know that we can do it.
Okay, so we should be all done with creating our form, our URL, and our HTML template. All the work we have to do now should be just inside of our views. If we come here and we'll refresh this, just make sure it's good, and we put in a name and an email address and a suggestion like cover pyramid, and we hit submit, like nothing happens, right? We can come back over here and we see that we just got a post and it gave it 200 because our view doesn't care. Anytime a request comes in, get, post, put, delete, patch, whatever, our view doesn't care. Our view just goes through the exact same work every single time, no matter what. So we need to make it to where our view pays attention to the kind of request that comes in. So let's go here and let's add, we can just leave our form like that for now. And then we'll do an if, and we'll say request.method is equal to post, and it'll always be all caps like that. So if a post request comes in, then we want to do something different. What we want to do here is we want to do form equals forms.suggestionForm, and we want to give it the data from request.post. So what this does is it takes all of the form data that comes in and puts it into the form, and where the keys line up. So request.post is kind of like a dictionary. It has keys, and the keys have values. So where the key name is, or where the key email is, it'll put that into the form. So it just fills in the data from the request. So that's cool. That's handy. Now we need to make sure the form is valid. It's that they gave us good data. So if form.isValid, then we need to do something. Let's just print right now. We'll just say good form, and then we won't worry about anything else. We'll just leave that alone. And so then that should be it for right now. Okay, let's just stop right there for right now. So if it's a post, then it's going to check to make sure it's valid. And if it's valid, then it's going to tell us good form. So let's try this again. And we'll say Kenneth and Kenneth@example.com. And we'll say Pygame, because a lot of people want Pygame. So submit. Nothing's going to change on the site, except for you see our data is still in there. And if we look here, it printed out good form. So awesome. We know that it worked. So what I want to do is when somebody creates a suggestion, I want it to send me an email. And so to do that, there's a couple of pretty easy things that we can do. So first of all, we need to send an email. So we need to go to settings.py. And it's way too much to ask that you all, and even myself, actually send emails. So Django has some handy built-in email backends that we can use. And we can send emails just into this little console here. Or we can do what I'm going to do in this one. We can send emails into a file. So we're going to make a new setting here, email backend. And it's going to be django.core.mail.backends.filebased.email backend. That is a lot of words. And then we have to give it a file path for where to put the files that it creates for each email. So we'll say email file path, and that's going to be os.path.join, and basedir, which is a variable we set up at the top of this file, and suggestions. And Django will create this folder for us. We don't have to create this folder ourselves. So that's all we have to do here. So that just puts the emails into a really handy, really nice file format. Okay, so now let's come back over here to our views, and up here in our imports, we need to do a couple more imports. So I'm going to get a couple of things ready. Let's do from Django.contrib, import messages. From Django.core.mail, import sendMail, which is a really handy little function for sending mail. From Django.core.url resolvers, import reverse. And from Django.http, import HTTP response redirect. All right, so these are some things we're going to need in just a little bit. Let's minimize this down again. All right, so now right in here where we've been doing this form is valid, let's see about sending our email. So the first thing we do is we call sendMail. And sendMail requires a lot of arguments, so I'm going to do multiple lines here. So the first argument that goes into sendMail is the subject. So we're going to say suggestion from, and then a placeholder. And we're going to fill this in with form.cleanedData. This is the good data that comes out after the form is validated. And we're going to put in name. All right. And then we put in the body of the email. So this will be form.cleanedData suggestion. And then we put in the email address that it's from. So we're going to put in the name and the email. This might be a slightly different way of using format that you haven't seen before, but you can feed it a dictionary, and it'll use the dictionary keys to fill in these names here. And form.cleanedData has a field called name and a field called email. And then finally, we put in who it gets sent to. So I'm going to send it to myself, but since this isn't actually going to go anywhere, it won't matter. All right, so that does the sending mail. And then I also want to send them a message on the website saying, thank you for your submission. So we'll use the messages part of Django, which lets us just put flash messages up onto the screen. And we're going to say add message, and we're going to put in request messages.success because they successfully gave us a thing. And we'll say thanks for your suggestion. And then finally, and you're going to get used to doing this a lot, we're going to return HTTP response redirect. And we have to tell it where to go. So we're going to reverse the URL to suggestion. Let me make sure I named that correctly. Yep. All right. And so what reverse does is it goes to your urls.py, finds the URL that matches the name and arguments you give it, and figures out the URL that comes from it. Okay. So we already have this. If it's a post, then we're going to do all this stuff. We're going to send the email. We're going to send a message. And then we're going to redirect to somewhere else. That redirect will be a GET request. And so we'll get a blank form instead of a form that already has some values filled out. So let's just go ahead and submit this again. And if everything worked, maybe we don't have the messages on there yet. But let's look out here. And let's refresh this. And we should see suggestions. And then right here is a timestamp for this thing. And it's a log. It doesn't know what it is. Let's rename this to .txt. And it should be able to show it to us. Close those. Let's open this file again. There we go. All right. So we can see it's from Kenneth at example.com with the name of Kenneth. It's going to me at Team Treehouse, and the suggestion was Pygame. You could obviously expand on this a lot further if you wanted to. And so our message didn't show up, and I'm really not sure why, but I'm going to add in a snippet for that, and then we will refresh our thing. Because this is just way too much code for me to type on camera. So let's refresh. There we go. Thanks for your suggestion. And we've got a little close button that doesn't do anything. All right, cool. So this will be in the workspace if you want to launch the workspace and see what's in there. This is all explained in Django's documentation. I'll put a link to that in the teacher's notes.
There's a really common shortcut of creating a form with request.post or none, and then checking the validity of the form. If it's invalid, you're in a GET request. At least that's the idea. The problem is that it's 100% possible to have a completely valid blank form. It's also possible that the request wasn't a post. Both of these things leave your view in a somewhat ambiguous state. It's better to be explicit, like our if that checked the request's type, than to hope that you'll remember your edge cases.